Cast your mind back to the year of 1995, a time when one-on-one fighters were at the forefront of gaming. In this year alone, you had Mortal Kombat 3, Tekken 2, Street Fighter Alpha, King of Fighters 95, and Weapon Lord, amongst countless others. But here's the thing, you're 14 years old, you want all these games, but your pocket money only gets you one of these titles a year. What's the solution? You make your own fighting game. I mean, the answer is obvious. That way, you have a game you can play that you didn't even have to pay for, and you charge 30 quid for it. So for each 2 copies you sell, you can get your hands on all those other fighting games you really want. But you probably won't need those because your fighting game is going to be amazing, right? That's why you're charging 30 quid. Right? Right? Battle of the Eras isn't something I expected to exist, but there it is, existing. A game built by 14-year-olds in 1995 and feeling very much like it was built by 14-year-olds in 1995. Battle of the Eras is, as you'd expect, awful, and the idea that they tried to charge money for this should fill me with rage, but honestly, just makes me go,
that is the sweetest thing. No, that is honestly that's the sweetest thing. Shut up and wait.
Here we have a game that unashamedly takes its inspiration from Mortal Kombat, with digitized characters cropped from green screen, only instead of really beefy looking dudes or robots with missiles for fists, we have a selection of children dressed in costumes. I mean, check out XLX2250 here. This is supposed to be some sort of cybernetic human, but budget restraints and all that, he's basically just wearing a grey tracksuit. There are reams and reams of text throughout the game, as you may have noticed here. None of them make a great deal of sense and don't seem to tie together in any meaningful way. Let's take Gatekeeper here as an example. He was born in London, fled to a forest after talking shit about the king. He made money by charging a fee for entering his part of the forest. I'm not quite sure how that setup works considering the size of a forest, but perhaps he had a toll booth or something. Anyway, he ends up speaking to a spirit who leads him to a time portal. So that just happened. That's just one character. All of the other characters are very similar in their slapdash fantasy sci-fi nonsense, and the actual story of the game itself leans fairly heavily on genetic engineering, so I have no idea what's going on. But you know what? I don't care, because who actually cares about the stories in fighting games? Literally no one, apart from you, who's currently sat there seething about it. Going straight into the main story mode, we're presented with this lumpy version of Earth. I'm not sure how they managed to make it non-spherical, but it's not for us to question. Taking our first character, Ferrikin, into battle, we found out that we're up against a Minotaur. It goes into a lot of detail about this Minotaur. It really pushes the whole Minotaur aspect. I mean, look, you even fight in the Minotaur's labyrinth. So imagine my surprise when this happens.
Round 1. Fight.
Yeah, you don't fight a Minotaur, you fight a worm. Having read an interview with the developer on Discman.com, it turns out that they built the Minotaur in plasticine, realised they couldn't get any of the articulation to work, and so had to think on the fly and made a worm instead. This has automatically increased the game's score by 6 points. This is the best thing I have ever heard. It just perfectly sets up your expectations. So, onto the game itself. Well, it's gash. I think you probably already knew that. It just is. There's not a great deal I can say other than it was a Mortal Kombat ripoff created by 14-year-olds for MS-DOS. But it's still quite alarming to actually feel it in your hands. Controls are stiff. Attacks rarely feel like they're actually landing, movement is wonky, characters overlap each other, and when it comes to fighting our pal the Worm here, using specific moves on him results in your character getting lodged inside him mid-animation. There is literally nothing you can do at this point. You just live there now. I really wanted to get past this worm, but I was constantly finding myself either stun-locked by his consistent attacks, or very differently stun-locked because I accidentally stood inside him. So I jumped into melee mode to take on a human opponent and found that the character Sho Jin seemed a lot easier to control than some of the others I'd tried out. Let's see if he can beat the worm.
The worm.
No. Okay, well, I'm completely stumped. Let's try Shadow Snake.
Point.
Shadow Snake wins.
Yeah, I guess that'll do it. For the rest of the game, Shadow Snake's ability to just never let an enemy get a moment's rest is absolutely crucial to stop them from doing the same to me. Honestly, it just feels like bullying. The only time I had issues is when I had to fight myself, and that's mostly because I began to lose track of which one I was supposed to be. Thankfully, down and kick as the computer control player just happily walks into me was definitely the way to go. I do like the idea that they're fighting in pitch black though. It certainly looks better than this forest level that is also on a railway track for some reason, or this stage set in the future where the only futuristic thing is a small laser show in the background for tiny disco purposes. And while we're talking nice things and tiny discos, the music is actually alright for what it's attempting to emulate.
Shadow Snake wins.
After defeating all your opponents, you get more nonsense story where a guy called Temporus takes you to the moon so he can steal your genetic code, and then the final fight happens and I honestly have no idea what is going on. I seem to be fighting a burnt potato with swords sticking out of it. It also has an unnecessary amount of health to deal with, but as it can never hit me back, it doesn't really matter. And then the game crashed. There's not much more to say on Battle of the Eras other than to say, I love this. Is it worth playing? No. Was it worth £30? God no. Did anyone ever buy it? Probably not, and for good reason. The game was priced at £30, and with it being a shareware release, I'm pretty confident that anyone who played it would quite easily see that it was not, in fact, worth £30. But regardless of all of that, it stands as a monument to a specific period of time where a group of kids banded together for a project that represented the things that they were into at that time. A group of kids putting in a ton of work and effort to create something that must have felt like a monumental achievement, but was actually just a bit shit and pretty much unplayable. What's not to love about that?